In today's show, the Blazers have a couple new vacancies on their coaching staff. Plus, a week out from the NBA draft lottery, we review a couple mock drafts. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, a Monday smorgasbord for you. You're listening to Monday, May 6th episode. Thanks for listening. Your boy's back from vacation. Sorry we didn't have a Friday show, but that's just how it happened. But Monday we got a full one, a whole bunch of news. There are two new coaching vacancies on Chauncey Billups' staff. Plus, we'll review a couple mock drafts as we are a week out from the NBA draft lottery. We'll finally know where the Blazers are going to be selecting and if they're going to be selecting twice in the first round, as well as their two second rounders coming up. We're just a week away. Plus, we'll review the season that was for Matisse Thybulle, continuing our season review series to close the show, talking Matisse and what he did in his first his first full season with the Trail Blazers. Let's start with the news, though. The Blazers have two new coaching vacancies on Chauncey Billups' staff, as first reported by Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian. The Blazers will not renew the contracts for assistant coaches Scott Brooks and Rodney Billups. This is pretty interesting. Scott Brooks was the lead assistant, the associate head coach, lead assistant. I don't know if he had associate head coach title. Lead assistant on Chauncey Billups' staff. He sat next to him in the big chair since Billups was hired by the Blazers 3 seasons ago, and he's not coming back for year 4. And Rodney Billups, who was an addition in year 2, is Chauncey Billups' little brother. His little brother, and his little brother's not coming back. They joined Steve Hetzel, who as folks leaving the staff. Hetzel, of course, joined the Brooklyn Nets for a new job. Brooks and Billups not getting new jobs, just not getting their contracts reviewed. And here we are in May, with the Blazers now needing to hire three new coaching jobs. Billups was behind the bench role, so that's kind of like a more player developy type assistant. But in front of the bench, these are big time coaching spots in the league, including an elite assistant, Scott Brooks and Hetzel. Brooks and Hetzel are veteran coaches in the league, guys who've coached Brooks coached a bunch of head coaching, different head coaching jobs. Hetzel is a longtime assistant coach in the league. The Blazers are probably in the market for some veteran leadership. It is an interesting time to do this. First, let me talk about this, and then I'll talk about the timing. I've mentioned this in previous shows when Steve Hetzel left for the Brooklyn Nets, is that I think assistant coaching and coaching staff construction is incredibly important in the league, but it's largely an unknown variable from folks outside of the NBA and folks even outside of the staff itself. I think it's incredibly important to have good assistant coaches, but it's really hard for me in my position and most people just period and who are outside of the organization to have really a sense of what assistant coaches, what they do and what they're good at, right? You can get a sense of what they do because you can ask, but there is a soft science to coaching that is sort of unknowable. It's a hard variable to know, but it's an incredibly important variable. I think you want to hire for the Blazers. I think their priority should be hiring creative offensive minds. I think for the most part, Chauncey Billups is a pretty good defensive coach. He's had some bad defensive teams. He's had some weird rosters, and I think his first year was pretty just a bad overall coaching job, period. But I think this season he was clearly pretty good as a defensive coach. When they were healthy, they were pretty competitive on defense. They stopped playing zone early in the season because it was a mess, and then they reintroduced it, and they were better at it as they reintroduced it. I think they pressed a little bit too much, but I like the willingness to be creative there. They showed some press that dropped back into zone. They showed some press that dropped back into man. They had some creative looks. At least they tried creative things that you don't see everywhere in the league. And I think that, if nothing else, commendable. And the Blazers finishing 23rd overall in defense is not something to really celebrate, but it's not truly awful in considering their personnel. It's kind of fine. I think Billups is pretty he's fine on defense, or at least he's creative enough on defense. Offensively, he's not very creative. I would say my biggest criticism of him, not my biggest, but one of my major criticisms of the sort of Chauncey tenure is that the offense has been either put guys in positions where they're not going to be maximized, or just been too vanilla, or it's just like, okay, here's one single action and everyone else is standing and watching. And if that single action doesn't result in breaking down the defense and kind of lead to everything else, then you are dancing a lot in isolation. I think the Blazers should prioritize offensive creativity with this hire, but it is weird timing, no doubt about it. Billups is entering the final guaranteed year of his deal this season. And Joe Cronin gave like a very much full-throated support of Chauncey Billups. He's not going to get fired. He's going to be our coach next year, blah, 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 blah. Maybe not like when asked, like, what does Chauncey do well? He didn't give the like a X's and O's. This is the thing that he does well as a coach. But what is like echoed throughout, usually when you ask folks in the organization, players and Cronin, is that like people really respect Chauncey's voice when he talks. Whether that translates to being a good coach, I think is a whole nother conversation. And like my cards on the table, I don't think Billups has been a particularly good coach in the NBA. And I think that is fairly obvious. But coaches get better, and since the Blazers aren't going to make a change, like I'm not going to sit here and be like, Billups sucks, Bill. That's for someone else. I'm sure you can find the place on the internet where someone is chanting Billups sucks. That is not the type of thoughtful podcasting I'm going to do here necessarily. I do think there's some certainly obvious criticisms of what he's done, but entering the final year of his contract makes him a really, he's not in a position where he could ask for a contract extension. Like, what has he done to warrant to be like, I would like more years, please? That's just not realistic. He has a team option for the following season, so he could be exercised and that could be exercising and end up a couple years. He could obviously coach well this season and coach himself into a longer contract and all of those things, right? Like all of that's on the table. As long as he's coming back, he'll have an opportunity to improve. But hiring for the spot, particularly for an associate head coaching spot, like in Brooks's place, and Hetzel, like front of a bench job, for a coach entering the final year of his guaranteed final year of his contract, that's a dicey spot to take. You're either taking a job knowing that the guy who you're sitting next to in the chair could be fired and you could become the head coach. That's an awkward job to take. Or just knowing that it could be very short term, right? Like even if nobody gets fired in season, but then you just get to the end of the year and you don't get renewed, everybody's gone. Like everybody's gone. It's unlikely that like a large chunk of the staff would translate to a new coaching staff if they were to hire a new coach the following season. So it is a very curious time to have to make these hires. But if you do believe in what Chauncey does, like if the organization, if it to be trusted, right? Like if you trust sort of the talking points from Joe Cronin, a couple of the, whenever Blazers players get asked about Chauncey Billups, they say nice stuff about him. It's pretty rare for players to say mean stuff about their coaching staff. Occasionally you'll get some telling no comments, but for the most part, when you ask players, they say, we like him, we like the way he communicates, he's got the gravitas and all those things. But, what Cronin says, sort of the leadership and the respect throughout the building. If the soft stuff is what Chauncey does well, hiring coaches and filling out the coaching staff with guys who are much better at the X's and O's stuff could be valuable, right? That maybe is the way to maximize it. I think the sort of glass half full thinking here is like, hey, we have a coach who people respect and listen to, but what he struggles at, like the royal we being the Blazers here, it's like they have a coach that people listen to and respect, but what they maybe don't have is someone who's like a really creative offensive mind. What if they hire that? I think that is sort of the glass half full. The sort of the curious part is the timing, right? Is like who, there's not that many assistant coaching jobs that'll be sought after. Like even the worst jobs in the league are sought after. There's 30 teams in the NBA. It's a closed ecosystem, all of that, right? So I don't think though it's like they're going to have trouble hiring, but it is curious. And I will say that it speaks to the Blazers and maybe Billups' willingness to say, yeah, like we need to get better if you don't renew your lead assistant or your brother. That's telling like, hey, this is time for change. And if you're not going to change the big chair because of the guaranteed money and the salary behind it, changing the smaller chairs, changing folks who sit down bench is maybe a good way to shake up the coaching staff, get some new thought, get some new insight, get some new things in there, and like reap the benefits of having a new team, having a new coaching staff without having the massive overhaul that it would sometimes demand. Okay, I think that's your coaching news. The Blazers are going to have to hire 3 coaches. That'll be something that we'll definitely track here on the show, and I promise you I won't pretend to know about assistant coaches when they get hired. I'll just say, Here's the resume. Hope they help. You can guess. I just don't. I think it's a truly unknowable variable that will never stop people from pretending to know. I'll tell you that. I've been around the NBA media enough that I've seen folks pretend. And shout out to y'all. Keep it up. Let's talk mock drafts. The Blazers are a week out from the NBA draft lottery. The final on Sunday. I think it's at noon on Sunday, on Mother's Day. So not great timing for all people who have a mother or an important mother figure in their life. We're going to be doing some lunch type of things, but that's what the NBA has given us. They're giving us a noon draft lottery. So we will find out about a week from the time you're listening to this podcast, when the Blazers where the Blazers are going to select. But for now, let's talk mock drafts, because I think it's telling that even a week out from the lottery, a couple, 6 weeks out from the draft, it's like nobody knows anything. Nobody knows anything. Or at least there is a lot of difference in thought across the top of the mocks. Let's talk about that in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, let me tell you about Monopoly Go. It's the twist on the classic Monopoly game you already love. Listen, if you're a Monopoly player, you know that it gets highly competitive. But Monopoly Go still gives you the competitive juices you love, but plus, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much more to get, like unique stickers that you can trade and complete and collect to complete albums for big prizes. You got cool new playing pieces you can travel the boards with, plus hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. And Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day. They got constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton of those tournaments and challenges include their own unique mini games, like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover over there on Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free. That's Monopoly Go, available on the Google Play or on the App Store. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And look, it's that time. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. All right. So let's talk mock drafts. I mentioned in the lead into this, in this first segment, that we're a week out, and there is just so much. There is a great deal of difference among the people who do this professionally about who's going where. And I think the lack of consensus in the draft, and I've talked about this a bunch in the shows, I think in general it helps teams like the Blazers with 2 picks because they can kind of move around the board and figure out who they want. But it also leads to some confusion, to some extent, just the uncertainty if you're picking back, downstream of teams and you have no idea what they're going to do. It gets a little bit dicey. Let's visit some mock drafts, and I want to talk about that uncertainty a little bit. Next week is going to start flowing with mocks. Okay, this is what a lot of folks take. They release one at the end of the NCAA tournament, and then they kind of wait. So it's early April, and they wait until early May, middle of May, and then they crank them out as we get up to the draft, because once you know the draft lottery, everyone's like, okay, now I know the order, here we go. So I think next week we'll really start to get in earnest into mock draft season. Now we're kind of in the people who do this all the time are churning out draft content, and so we're getting it. But I don't have 6 mock drafts to run through. I got 2 and a big board from ESPN. So let's start with CBS, Adam Finkelstein, who is the director of scouting at 24/7 Sports and works for CBS. He's got a mock draft over there on CBS. He's just going chalk. He's not simulating the lottery or anything like that. So just based on order, and has the Blazers picking 4th. At first, Alex Sargos 1, Nikola Topic 2, Ron Holland 3, and Matisse Thybulle 4 to the Blazers. That means the Blazers would be on the board with Zach Sachet and Matisse Thybulle and Donovan Clingan if you're into it. and they would go Buzelis in this mock. I like Buzelis for the upside. I think he has some, he's big, 6'8", 6'9", and has a little bit of, end-to-end off the dribble juice. Didn't shoot well in the G League. I thought, and when I saw him in person in the G League, I thought strength was a big problem for him. You can get stronger. You can improve your jump shot. I think he has some tools to get there. Whether he gets there or not is the big question. But I like Buzelis I like the upside swing on Buzelis. I know some folks love Zachary Risacher. We'll talk about him more in a second. So if you love Risacher there, that mock would have at least an opportunity for the Blazers to stand pat at 4, assuming they're at 4. Obviously, we'll know more soon, and make that pick. Over on Bleacher Report, Jonathan Wasserman, who's been doing it forever, many moons of mock draftery and NBA draft coverage, and Was has a mock where the Blazers, he did the lottery simulation. The Blazers fall to 6th in this lottery. 1, Alexander Sarr. 2, Nikola Topic goes 2. 3 is Zachary Risacher. 4, Reed Shepherd. 5, Donovan Clingan, and the Blazers at 6 would take Stephon Castle out of UConn. I really like Stephon Castle's game. I like his game. I think he plays with good sort of pace and fluidity off the bounce. I think he can pass. I think he is an excellent defensive player. I don't see a star. I see a good NBA player. I see maybe a long-term NBA player. I have no problem watching him play, or when I watched him play for UConn this year, I saw a pro. Like, I had no problem seeing a pro, right? It's like, oh, that dude's going to play in the league. He's just a freshman. Look at his pacing. Look at the versatility. Look, just has some touch on a little in between floater game a little bit. Didn't shoot well, but like clearly has 6'6" ish. See what he measures at the NBA Combine, but like listed at 6'6", like size to be a true like effective 2-3. He's big enough to play probably either of those wing spots in the league. Or if he's a true 2, it's like I have no problem seeing him be like a creative secondary creator too. I don't see a star. I don't see it. I didn't watch him play and say, oh, if he just does this, then he'll be like this dominant. I'm not sure I see that. When you're picking at 6, you might not get a star, right? Like that's just the nature of some drafts, right? And getting a long-term NBA player is like a pretty good outcome from like any top 10 pick, quite frankly, if you look at the history of them. But like, the Blazers need stars as opposed to need solid players. It wouldn't stop me from drafting Castle, and if you end up at 6th, sometimes you have to just pick where you are. Sometimes that's life, but I'll probably enjoy Steph Castle's game at the next level. Will I enjoy his game like while watching an All-Star game? I don't think so, right? But that gets me to the Jonathan Givony over at ESPN had his top 25 ranked players. This is a big board, not a mock draft, but on Givony's big board, he has Zach Risacher number 1 overall ahead of Sarr. I think that's pretty uncommon. I'm not sure I know earlier in the draft, maybe like 2 months ago, that Risacher was as high as 1 in a couple places, but I don't think he's stayed there for the most part across the board. ESPN having him at 1 is telling that, like, I think Givony does a bunch of scouting, but he also talks to everybody in the league, and like having him at 1 is telling. This is kind of where I'm at, Risacher. I think for like, if you just think about him like in a vacuum, to use a Neil Olshey term, like he's 6'8", he can shoot and he can defend. What if the Blazers had that player on their team tomorrow? That would be exceedingly helpful. Someone who could defend a couple spots on the wing and really shoot it from the outside with size. Yeah. And a little bit of playmaking skills, some passing skills, like incredibly valuable for what the Blazers need. But he might not have enough off the like individual shot creation skills, and this is just from reading the scouting reports, that make me really confident in him being a number 1 overall pick. He has the tools to be good in the league and good for a long time, but I think the shot creation stuff is so valuable for like lead wings, and even just like good players in general. What stars do in the league is they go get their own shot. That's like the nature of the NBA, is like particularly like pretty much at every position now. You can throw Embiid and Jokic in there too. Is like you can give someone the ball at 20 feet and say, hey, we need a bucket, and they can go get you a bucket, or dribble across half court in Jokic's case and say, we need a bucket. Okay. And go make it happen. If Risacher develops those skills, then he's going to be good. If he doesn't, then he's probably going to be an NBA player, but whether he's the number 1 overall pick, I think that's interesting. But if ESPN, certainly Jonathan Givony knows more about the NBA draft than I ever have. So like if he's got him 1 overall, that tells you sort of the opinion of a skill level. He's got Alexander Sarr 2, Donovan Clingan 3, Rob Dillingham 4, Nikola Topic 5, Matisse Thybulle 6, and Reed Shepherd 7. I think this is kind of the example I want to use, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the mock drafts. I'm probably not going to do any more mock draft roundup until we get to next week. So this is yours for the week right here. It's like ESPN has Risache 1, CBS has Risache going 5, and Bleacher Report has Risache going 3. That means that there could be as many as 4 players taken before someone's number 1 overall prospect, or two picks before number 1 overall prospect. That happens, right? Like, I'm old enough to remember the 2018 draft. It's like it is not unheard of for that to happen, but like it puts the Blazers in an interesting spot. Like I said, downstream. Either you're going to get your number 1 player that just falls to you. Like, if you value him and it's like, okay, well, Sarr's going to go 1. It's just like the draft starts at 2, as they say. It either makes it easier to maneuver because hey, everybody, there's so much disparity of opinion between the 2 through 8 range that we can pretty much land anywhere and get our second best guy. Or it makes it really hard to make some decisions because you have no idea how teams value these guys. I think once we get in the lottery and once we get the lottery established and once the folks who cover the league can talk to teams and get the intel, it'll be really interesting how consensus mocks form. And I think that's something I'll be paying attention to over the next month is like, once we know who's picking where, how much does the consensus and team needs and team direction and team preferences, how much does that sort of change things? And does Risache end up at the top still, or does Sarr end up at the top still? Where does Nikola Topic fall? All of those things I think are going to be incredibly fascinating, something to watch over the next month. That's it for your mock drafts. Let's talk Matisse Thybulle. Matisse is a great defensive playmaker. The question is, what else does he do? Let's review his season and look ahead for what's next for my man Tease in that third segment. Join me there, won't you? But first, I want to tell you about DoorDash. You know DoorDash because they bring you the food you love to your home. That's what DoorDash does. They bring you delicious food to your home, but they can also bring a smile to your mother's face. Or the mother in your life, or your wife, or your girlfriend, or whoever it might be who you want to celebrate on Mother's Day. Right now. They're giving you 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order right now on DoorDash. So, does your mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur? Is she outdoorsy? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. And you can get that all in a one-stop shop on DoorDash. You can either schedule your order ahead of time, like we're a week out from Mother's Day, and if you want to say like, listen, deliver this Saturday morning, deliver this Sunday morning, you can schedule it right there on the DoorDash app, or you can get day of delivery. DoorDash makes it easy for you. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash. Terms apply. All right, still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, and you are still listening to Locked On Blazers. Let's talk Matisse Thybulle's season in review. Listen, Matisse played his first full season with the Blazers this year, and he started from the jump. It was the speculation by one particular podcaster that he was going to be their starting small forward on opening night. He was indeed the starting small forward on opening night, and he started the first 10 games before eventually giving way to upstart rookie and defensive ace Toumani Camara, and Thybulle ended up playing mostly a backup role. After the first 10 games, he started just 9 for the remainder of the season. On the year, he played in 65 games, including 19 starts. He averaged 5.4 points, 2.1 boards, 1.4 assists, shot 39.7% from the floor, which included 34.6% from three, and he also shot 75.9% from the free throw line. The number to know from Matisse Thybulle, though, is 72.9. 72.9 is the number you need to know. 73% of his field goal attempts came from three-point range. He's someone who shot below average from three. At the beginning of the season, he was acing them. The first 31 games, Matisse Thybulle shot 37.7% from three on 4 attempts per game. You shoot 38% on 4 attempts per game. You're just a good 3-point shooter. That's useful. And Matisse Thybulle was a useful shooter for the Blazers. 4 is not a huge volume number, but it is enough on any given night if you're playing about 25 minutes that you can start to, at least, even if they don't guard you, you can cash in and make a 3 or 2, depending on your number of attempts. I guess 3.9 attempts per game on 37% shooting is like not quite 2 a game, not quite 2 makes. But that was that's the first 31 games of the season. That's basically up until the turn of the year. And then December 31st comes and goes. We get to the new year and Matisse Thybulle struggled to shoot. In the second half of his season, in 34 games, he shot 31.1% from 3 and started taking a little bit less. He starts seeing him go in less and starts passing up shots and shoots 31.1% from 3 on 3.2 attempts per game. But here's the problem. 73% of his shots come from 3. So if he's taking less threes overall, taking about 1 less a game, he's just doing less on offense. He's being less aggressive. He's making less, he's taking less, but he doesn't really have like the juice to score in many other ways. He can score a little bit in transition. Occasionally he attacks a closeout. Okay. But like his 73 is probably too many, but like 60% of his shots are probably going to come from 3 in any NBA offense. When you take less and you make less, you are less valuable. And I think that is what changed for Matisse. But before we get into what changed and what's next, I want to revisit what my thoughts were way back when, in September, when I recorded this. This was before the Damian Lillard trade that you're going to hear Michael from the past here. This was when Matisse Thybulle and Nasir Little were going to be battling out for some small forward minutes heading into the season. Of course, Nasir Little ended up playing for the Phoenix Suns, but let's hear what Michael from the past had to say about Matisse heading into his first full season with the Blazers. Take it away, Michael from the past. What's the best case scenario for Matisse Thybulle? It's that he shoots above league average from 3 on similar volume to his 22-game stint with the Blazers. If Matisse Thybulle is a 36-37% three-point shooter, and he already does what he does on defense, which I think is kind of a given, he's going to be good. But the difference for him is volume. Matisse Thybulle shoots 36.5% from 3 on similar volume, like 4 a game, like he did last year for the Blazers. The accuracy is probably believable. The volume and the accuracy is what will get him to the best case scenario. And as I mentioned, that's in addition to continuing to be one of the league's best defensive playmakers. What's the worst case scenario for Matisse Thybulle? It's pretty narrow. It's pretty narrow. I think the best case and worst case for Matisse Thybulle is kind of what he does on offense. But the worst case scenario for Matisse Thybulle is that the things that caused him to slip out of the rotation in Philly is that he just doesn't do a lot on offense. He doesn't pass. He doesn't attack the rim. He has some turnover issues when he tries to do those things. And the shooting has been inconsistent. Even though he had his best shooting season of his career last year, he has never been a consistently high-level volume shooter in the league. The worst case scenario for Matisse Thybulle is that he is enough of a negative on offense that what he brings on defense doesn't quite matter. Thank you, Michael from the past. Look, I think Matisse Thybulle hit his worst case scenario because I think the defensive playmaking was there. Like, he still had an elite defensive playmaking season. He had elite steal percentage numbers, elite block percentage numbers, elite shot blocker on jump shots, like blocked the most 3-pointers of anyone in the league. He's good at it, right? Like he makes plays on defense. The problem is that his offensive inconsistency, particularly in the second half of the season when he was just not very good and then he wasn't very aggressive and those combinations of things, it's hard to say that he hit his best case scenario, right? He was tracking towards it. Matisse Thybulle has admitted as much, is that he knows the thing that's going to change his position in the league, his level of participation in games, his impacts period, is shooting. That's the thing that's going to change for him, because what he does on defense travels, and I think that's the real truth of this season. What he does on defense travels. He's not a sit down lock up type defender. He's a defensive playmaker. He gets in passing lanes, he blocks shots on closeouts. He's a great off ball weapon as a defender. he's not going to be your great point of attack lockup guy. He could be if you had good defenders around him, he could be a menace, right? If you had guys who could contain, keep players in front, and Matisse could just like take some risks and play sort of out of scheme behind the ball, a monster. Like, really, really good. The problem is the shooting. Like I said, I think 73% of his field goal attempts being threes is too many. 72.9, the number to know. I think that's too many. But I think 60 is the right number. So like we're not talking like a drastic change in his shot diet. A slight change in how he attacks would be helpful. And once you get that slight change in how he attacks, like we're talking every other game attacking a closeout basically is what that number comes to. It's like every other attacking a closeout and trying to get to the rim. And he's had some okay moments like that, but he just wasn't quite there on offense with enough consistency to say like, oh yeah, he can do this. This helps. This is the thing going forward. I think Matisse Thybulle's future is probably in the trade market. He is entering the second season of a 3-year contract he signed. He signed an offer sheet with the Dallas Mavericks. And so if you sign an offer sheet and the team matches, which the Blazers match, this incumbent team matches in restricted free agency, Matisse Thybulle has a de facto no trade clause for 1 season, but that ends when we flip over to the new league year in July. Matisse Thybulle will be traded sort of again, or could be traded against his will or without his approval, I should say, in this summer. Like he can be part of any trades. You don't have to worry about the sort of no trade thing that expires at the end of this year. It's only a 1-year thing to prevent teams from matching on contract offer sheets and then immediately flipping someone against their will. So it's to create the little bit of agency you have in restricted free agency is to give you some of that. I think a good team, particularly a team that has other good defenders and doesn't need Thybulle to be much of an offensive player and doesn't probably need him to be like a big minute guy, but like could really use some defensive playmaking and needs a little bit of help on the wing. I think they could easily talk themselves into being interested in Thybulle. He makes, he's making below mid-level money on the year. Or in the next 2 years. He's got a pretty good deal. He is a really good defensive playmaker and he can shoot a little bit. Sometimes he can shoot a lot. Sometimes he can't shoot. But there is, he's a career like 35% 3-point shooter, just under it. The league average is like 36. He's been better. He was better the last 2 seasons, and he was certainly better in his first 22 games in Portland and his first half of the season this year as well. And perhaps on a team with a little bit more creative offense and a little bit just like more getting him cleaner looks because Matisse Thybulle took fine shots, but like on a team with even more offensive juice, I think maybe you get him even easier looks and he knocks him down at league average. I think he has value there. If he's back on the Blazers in this season, great. Like, cause what he does travels. He'll be there and he'll be helpful. But if he's not, if they do end up trading him because a playoff type team or a more competitive type team values his defense, I think you can get back probably like a late first round pick, maybe like a top 20 protected first round pick or something. I don't think you're getting juicy first for him. And I don't think you're getting like a really fun young prospect for him either. Matisse Thybulle is a solid role player. And what you could trade for is probably the rights to another solid role player, but maybe in a sort of a different ilk, either a different position or a player some a little bit deeper into the future if they are a draft pick. Thybulle is good enough to help and flawed enough to have some questions about how much he can help, but the defense stuff travels, and I think we saw that this year. Okay, that's going to do it for today's show. Tomorrow's show is going to be a fun one. Don't miss it. It is the full season preview, all episode long, talking Anthony Simons. One of the most interesting parts of the Blazers' future going forward is Simons. What does he bring to the table in terms of his production? What is his trade value? All of those things. We'll discuss all of that in tomorrow's show. Come back and listen to that one, won't you? Tell your friends about the show. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.